On today's Locked On Jayhawks, we talk tightest, most important camp battles for KU football and some recruiting news. Dybantsa, the number one commit in 2025, narrows his list down. Is KU in it? Chris McCorkle is a new commit for the KU football team.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Eric Johnson, thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcasts, and thank you to the everydayers tuning in to each and every show. You can also find us on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the action. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, we're talking the biggest camp battles still to be decided for KU football. As camp continues on, we're going to get to our quarterback room preview as we'll get to our different positional previews, and we'll finish up with some recruiting news, both in terms of basketball with the number one recruit in the class of 2025 and Chris McCorkle, KU's newest football commit. We get to some info of him on today's episode of a loaded Locked On Jayhawks, which is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, so we're going to start off with what are some of the biggest camp battles that I guess still have to be decided that are going on right now for KU football. Let's start right here. Backup quarterback. That is a very important position with Jalon Daniels' injury past. In an ideal world, you won't have to worry about who this guy ends up being. But I think you end up in a very interesting place where it's like, could Isaiah Marshall be the slightly better option? But if it's close, do you go with Cole Ballard because you want to reserve a red shirt on Isaiah Marshall? If he's that much better, do you go with Isaiah Marshall? Like, if push comes to shove, when does it happen in the season? Could it be Cole Ballard at the start of the year and Isaiah Marshall ends up being the backup by the end of the season? Either way, it's those two guys, Cole Ballard and Isaiah Marshall, that have to show, they deserve that backup QB spot, and full well knowing if you're either of those guys, that you are really a snap away. I mean, you hear that all the time, and it is a little bit of cliche, but it is even more so at Kansas. Like, you are one snap away from having to be the dude. What about third string running back? I'm very interested in that. So you feel good. Devin Neal will be the guy. Daniel Highshaw will be the backup from there. Who's going to be that third string? We saw Dylan McDuffie transfer in and really nail down that role a season ago, and in kind of cleanup time at the end of games and in limited duties that he was asked to perform, he did well in what he was asked to do. And is it going to be Savion Morrison, who hasn't really ever had a bigger role on this team, but is somebody who had a highly regarded background in terms of his recruiting and his speed and everything like that? Is it going to be one of the young freshmen, redshirt freshmen, and Johnny Thompson, or a true freshman and Harry Stewart, who seems to be drawing, rave reviews early on in his career? That'll be interesting, not just from the standpoint of, it's mostly two running backs who play for Kansas. If you get an injury, then that moves things around a little bit. But from the standpoint of setting yourself up to be that number two guy for the following season when Devin Neal is off to the NFL at that point. Third string tight end, I think, is another one where you're looking at some of this camp battle going on. Jared Casey and Trevor Cardell feel like the top two guys in some order for me. Who's going to be that third guy? Is it going to be Leighton Cure, who Jeff Grimes seemed to be high on and bringing him aboard? Really athletic tight end, like that would make a lot of sense, but he hasn't been in the system as long. Is it going to be somebody like Jaden Ham, who's been a young player who redshirted and is slowly progressing in the program? What about Tavita Noah? You brought him on from the JUCO ranks with the expectation to be this good, blocking tight end. There are other options that you have out there, maybe guys who are former walk-ons. That'll be interesting to see, to me, who becomes the third tight end, because there will be formations that KU plays three tight ends on the field. And there will be times when maybe Jared Casey is kind of a H-back fullback role. And so in that specific role, if you're the third string tight end, you basically become the second string tight end in that specific formation. So it is a much used position relative to other teams' third string tight ends, especially teams who run spread. Like, you might never see the field if you're a third string tight end. That's not the case at Kansas. Like, you will get on the field. The offensive line machinations is going to be super interesting. And I think in general, you would say maybe that last guard spot, the fifth offensive starting line spot, would be the one. It feels like to me, Foster, Brown, Ford, and Cable do. Like, those are 4 or 5 starters. Who's going to be the fifth? Will it be Norland Gorchika? Will it be Daryl Simmons? Will it be Kobe Baines, right? You have a lot of options for that spot. Will it be Shane Bumgarner or something like that you can mess around with. And what is the best machination of that offensive line? That will certainly be important for KU as they try to get that offensive line to mesh and even outperform last year's offensive line, which was a very solid unit. Rush defensive end spot, the edge spot. Now, we've already heard from Brian Borland and Lance Leipold talking about that this is going to be a position that we see guys rotate and we see a lot of defensive ends play. But we've also heard that, there is a lot of athleticism and speed and potential and all that sort of stuff from the defensive end spot. The question becomes who's going to nail down not just the starting spot, but that second string spot where those two are the main ones rotating around, because it feels to me like it could be anybody. It feels like in the early going, they're giving that nod to maybe like a Dean Miller, but does the talent of a Bai Jobe or a Dak Brinkley or Deshaun Warner, does that usurp him in the end? And does it usurp it by week 1? Does it usurp it by week 7? Does Dean Miller just hold the job and take the opportunity and run with it, right? That kind of becomes the interesting question here, but that one is one that you're looking to kind of really, I mean, that might be the biggest question for the defense and the team overall. Who's going to be the pass rusher after you lost all that production from Austin Booker? Starting defensive tackles, it feels like to me G.J. Withers will be one of these, but it's not unthinkable because of the defensive tackle depth that they have that they go with somebody else. But it feels like it's more of a competition for that second starting defensive tackle spot. Caleb Taylor, Tommy Dunn, Javier Darrett. Those would be the three that I look to the most that are in that competition. I think Keenan Caldwell will be somebody who logs snaps as a rotational defensive tackle, but I view those other guys as kind of a better chance to be on that tier of having a chance to start. And I think Tommy Dunn is interesting because he had nice progression over the last year or two. Caleb Taylor was somebody who was thrown into the fire too early and then wasn't playing as much and then started playing a little bit more as the back end of last season came on and there were some injuries to the D-line and his body has been more right and he's figured out some of the other stuff that goes along with playing college football in terms of, keeping your body weight up as a defensive tackle and things like that. And it seems like he's ready for a possible breakout after I thought he was ready for a possible breakout as soon as 2022. So maybe that happens this year and he ends up being the guy. I think Tywan Berryhill versus J.B. Brown is interesting. Cornell Wheeler feels like he'll be the middle linebacker, the Mike linebacker in your system. He's going to be wearing the green dot, calling out the plays. The other linebacker position, which is kind of that like more pass coverage linebacker, like when it's Hawk, when it's Cinco, could be a safety, could be a DB. Sometimes they'll have basically a Hawk / linebacker, which will be more of a Jason Gilliam, Alex Reich, Logan Brantley type, who's more of a linebacker who is very athletic and can run. But what about that other, maybe the weak side linebacker spot? Would it be Tywan Berryhill, who we've seen play a lot of snaps, but has never really graded out that well in Pro Football Focus, and it kind of hit a new low last season, but was playing through injuries. So if he can be healthy, you'd assume he plays better than that. Or will it be J.B. Brown, who is a thumper, who is an absolute stud run stopper, but maybe you have questions about his overall game and pass defense and stuff like that. Realistically, you're going to see both of them play. They're going to rotate around, but who wins that job? Who plays more? Who is the starter among those players? And I mentioned the Hawk position. I think that's interesting just in terms of how they want to do it. We talked a little bit about this, and if you're an everydayer, you caught it, that some of the quotes from fall camp about that they've been using a lot of the safeties and some of those guys in the Hawk and kind of Cinco roles, that it could just be using Marvin Grant as a Hawk, but then in early downs or rundown situations, you do have like a Jason Gilliam out there who's kind of a hybrid between a linebacker and a Hawk, like in between both. The two deep corners, I think, is super interesting. Mello Dotson, Kobe Bryant, like those are your two starters. You feel great about that. Who's going to be the backups? Demarius McGee, is a former LSU player who was a top 300 recruit in the country. And now you're getting into where you've been in college for a few seasons to where things should start clicking for you. I think he had to deal with some injuries last season, but he's somebody who you expect to have a lot of talent and be able to compete for that spot, right? You look at all the freshmen you brought in at the corner position, maybe most notably Jalen Todd, and how those guys can impact things right away. What about an Andre Gibson, something like that? What about a Jameel Croft? I've been very high on what Jameel Croft is going to bring to the table after he came in as a very highly regarded recruit and redshirted his first year at Kansas. Like, I feel good about the talent that you're going to have in that 2 deep, but which players is it going to be? That I don't entirely know. I think special teams in general, like kicker, mean, that's tough competition. It's going to be Owen Pieper-Gertis, Charlie Weinrich. I don't know. I don't have a lot more to add to the kicker position. Same with like kind of the return men. Like there's a lot of different actions you can go. Do you go for the explosivity, the guy who can break tackles like a Trevor Wilson? Do you go for the safe guy like a Luke Graham who's catching punts? Do you go for Savion Morrison in kick return? Do you go for Jameel Croft, one of these freshmen? I don't know what you do, but I think those are the most notable position battles still to be decided in camp for KU football. All right, let's continue on in the show. We're going to get to our quarterback room preview, and then we'll get to the latest recruiting news on this loaded episode of Locked On Jayhawks. We are brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Continuing on here on Locked On Jayhawks with a quarterback room preview. We're going to get to our different positions here, and then we'll get into some of the latest recruiting news. KU landing a commit for football in 2025, and AJ Dybantsa, the number one commit, or recruit, I should say, in the class of 2025, narrowing his list down with KU on it. So let's start here. Who are the players in the quarterback room for KU football? We've got 6 names. There are, I think, only 4 that are on scholarship. Jalon Daniels, who is a redshirt junior. Isaiah Marshall, who is a true freshman, former 4-star recruit. Cole Ballard earned his scholarship last year. He is a redshirt freshman. Ben Easters is a redshirt junior. And then the walk-ons are Mikey Pauley, redshirt sophomore, and TJ Cruz, the 4th, who is a redshirt freshman. I think you look at the projected depth chart, like Jalon's going to be the guy who starts. We talked about this earlier. Competition for the second string between Marshall and Ballard. Whoever loses becomes the 3rd string there, and then the 4th string is probably Ben Easters. The biggest storyline has to be Jalon's health in all of this. That is what runs everything. If Jalon's healthy, we've seen it before, that he's going to look like one of the best quarterbacks, one of the most exciting quarterbacks and impactful quarterbacks in the conference and in the country. If he's not healthy, then there's going to be a lot of snaps available for those other guys. And the difference in KU season could go from, hey, can you make it to a 3rd straight bowl game, to, hey, can you win the Big 12 championship? Like, those are the big differences in what is the health status of Jalon Daniels going to be. It's obvious that is the biggest storyline for this position. It might be the biggest storyline for this entire team. Beyond that, it's who's going to win the backup quarterback battle for those reasons, kind of skewing off of Jalon's health. Because if he does have to miss a game or 2 games or 3 games, you had Jason Bean last year. He finished top 25 in the country in total QBR a season ago. A lot of teams have that at backup quarterback. A lot of other teams, you would see them go to the backup quarterback and they would just flounder. They wouldn't be able to do anything. You had a luxury a season ago, really the last couple of seasons. If you're Kansas, who's going to win the backup quarterback battle? How ready are they going to be? The last big storyline I think that you get to here at the quarterback room is, how does that backup quarterback battle affect the possible future starting quarterback? So here's what I mean by that. I think everybody automatically connects the dots that, let's say Jalon Daniels goes pro after this season, right? Starting quarterback for 2025, would it be Isaiah Marshall? Would it be Cole Ballard? Would it be David McComb, who's coming in, who a lot of fans of him recruiting from a lot of people that I've talked to. And a lot of people would kind of point to, okay, it'll be Isaiah Marshall. What does that mean if Cole Ballard beats out Isaiah Marshall? Couldn't you point to that, hey, Cole Ballard was ahead of Isaiah Marshall to finish on the depth chart in 2024? Does that mean that he has the upper leg to win the starting job in 2025? Or is there a little bit of, I guess, politics in it where it's like, well, we want to reserve the red shirt on Isaiah Marshall, so that would be part of it. The other reason why is that, Ballard's been in the system a little bit longer, so just for this year as a backup. And by year 2, when Isaiah Marshall has more familiarity in the system, just like Ballard does, then the talent is going to be too much to overwhelm, that he'll hop back above, that he'll leapfrog ahead of Cole Ballard. I think most people would assume that would be the case, and that's kind of where I would lie in that. But you have to leave it open to possibility for a staff that does like open competition all the time, does like to give at least a fair crack, a fair share to the veteran players, which I think is the right thing to do, that it would be, I don't think it would be as easy, like it would be a competition, I guess is the easy way of saying it. So I think that would be very interesting versus if Isaiah Marshall does win the second string job this year, whether it's at the beginning of the season or midway through the season or the end of the season, then it almost just feels like, yeah, okay, we don't need a competition. Like he's the guy, if that kind of makes sense. The last thing I'm going to do in all these position previews is very simple. Is this position better, worse, or the same than it was last season? I'm going to take a bit of a cop out here. Apologies. But it's so hard to say based on the biggest storyline if we go back to that. Like it's easy for me for some of these other positions about, yeah, that's about the same or that's a little bit better. It really does depend on Jalon Daniels' health. If Jalon Daniels winds up being healthy, and when I say being healthy, like I don't even know if it's playing all 12 games. If you get 10 games, if you get 11 games out of Jalon Daniels, I think the position unit ends up being better than it was a season ago. And that was even with Jason Bean balling out and getting, a couple games from Jalon Daniels. As great as Jason Bean was, there still is another level you get to when you have a healthy Jalon Daniels out there. And so from that standpoint, if Jalon's healthy, it's a better position unit than it was last season. And this is also one of those position units where it's like, yeah, if the guy stays healthy, you only need one of them because it's not receiver where you could have packages where 2 of them or 3 of them or 4 of them or 5 of them are on the field. It's like, if you're healthy and you're the guy and you stay healthy all year long, you're the only one out there, right? Outside of, garbage time or whatever. If Jalon's not healthy, it's a worse position unit because you don't have that coverage of Jason Bean. I think the interesting one is if you get kind of in between. So I said if you get 10, 11 games, 12 games from Jalon. If Jalon gives you 7 or 8 games, maybe even 9, it's probably about the same to what you got last year. Because last year you got 2 from Cole Ballard anyway. So if you end up getting 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 games from Jalon Daniels this year, it's probably about the same production that it was on the overall, on the totality that it was last season. But again, if Jalon's healthy, it's better than last year. If he's not, it's worse. Okay, let's get to some recruiting news. Number one commit in class of 2025 narrowed his list down. KU is on it. We've also got a new KU football commit, Chris McCorkle. We're going to talk about those both on Locked On Jayhawks. Our episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You might think that with, football around the corner, but not starting yet, basketball over, it's that dead period of sports. But I'm here to tell you it's really not. And even if it is, which, again, we have the Olympics, we got golf going on, including the Olympics in golf there, which I get big into. We got baseball going on. How about Bobby Witt Jr. and the boys? I mean, killing it right now, right? Trying to strengthen up the bullpen. If that can just get, seized, everything will be good from there. But this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So you can head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. You can get in on those Royals bets. You can get in on, even if you want to look ahead to the football season, futures. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Who's going to win the national championship? Who's going to make the playoff? Who's going to win the Heisman? Put your money where your mouth is, and maybe you'll be able to use some of those boosts or bonuses that you're going to get daily from FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, continuing on here with Locked On Jayhawks. And again, don't forget you can check out all across our Locked On Podcast Network. If you're curious, what's going on, KU plays Illinois early in the season. Like, what are things looking like over there? You can check out that show. You can check out the Locked On Big 12 if you want to learn about the conference, or you can check out another sport if you're interested to see, what the Royals are doing. We have a Locked On Royals podcast. So check out all across our Locked On Podcast Network, and wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Okay, so some recruiting news here. Let's start with basketball. We've been talking football all day, so we'll touch on basketball real quick before we get back into football. AJ Dybantsa is a 6'9", 200-pound small forward in the class of 2025. He is seen as the number one recruit in the country pretty much everywhere you look. Like, he's one of those number one recruit in the country. He's kind of like a Cooper Flagg this year. I'm not saying the games are similar, but in terms of, yeah, this guy is the guy. Like, and this guy is not just the guy. He's like supposed to be a dude once he gets to the NBA, right? So he's just kind of this really big wing with a long wingspan. He's got a really good pull-up game, just a smooth player who's got all the size and everything you would want from a wing, who can initiate and do all these sorts of things. Really, really good basketball player, obviously, when he is the number one recruit in the country. Duh. Well, he narrowed down his, recruiting search, or his finalists, just a few days ago. And here are the schools that are still available on his list: Kansas, BYU, Kansas State, Auburn, Alabama, North Carolina, and Baylor. Now, what's interesting here is he is on the Nike grassroots circuit. So the thought is that he's going to go to a Nike school. I know there are some that are skeptical on KU's actual involvement in this, or actual chances, I should say, of landing him, and that there is a bit of, hey, if I'm wanting to go to, say, I don't know, North Carolina or something, we can bid up the price if we put an Adidas school on there, because now Nike's going to be like, no, we can't let this kid get away from Nike and go to an Adidas school. So you put that up there. There was a lot of rumors about BYU, and that would be a possible future spot. So who knows? Maybe you'll even see him playing against Kansas in the future, but certainly want to keep an eye on. And I guess it's not a bad thing that Kansas is on the list. Who knows? Maybe they can make something work, and maybe they are able to figure something out. Maybe they are able to schedule a visit. I remember they scheduled a visit with Cooper Flagg, though, and that kind of got the hope up, oh, this is that. And then it ended up not happening, which I don't know if that was just again, going back to the bidding thing of hey, we're going to schedule this visit with Kansas, and then Nike or Duke or whatever other school is hey, don't go on the visit and we'll pay you extra money in NIL. I don't know if that's how this stuff works or not, but I don't know. Maybe that's something. Maybe it's not. Maybe this does have a real shot for KU, and that'd be pretty cool if they did. KU football landed a commit in Chris McCorkle. He is a 6'1", 172-pound, although I've seen some people say it might be closer to 160, which honestly, that would be kind of KU's type, which they've had a lot of success with guys like Mello Dotson and Kobe Bryant, who aren't 200 pounds, but they've had success. Anyway, he is from Sarasota, Florida, class of 2025 at a Cardinal Mooney High School, and he actually becomes KU's highest rated commit. It felt like this kind of came out of the blue, it's funny because not only did it come out of the blue, but it's oh, you have your new highest rated commit. So I know he had offers from Michigan State, Indiana, a bunch of other Power 5 schools, Big Ten schools, stuff like that. And maybe it just didn't work out at some of those other schools for, whatever reason. He did have a Kansas visit earlier on. I think that was back in June. He at one point was committed to Indiana and ended up decommitting. I think he visited Iowa and stuff like that. So he is a 3-star, number 31 rated corner. That's pretty high up there on 24/7 Sports. On the 24/7 composite, he is 530th in the country. And so this just adds even more to your recruiting class. And if you remember, if you were an everyday or you tuned in to our shows, we talked about this, that there was a little bit of restlessness from some fans who follow recruiting for KU football about that it feels like they've missed more on guys than in years past. But I kind of pointed out that if you look at the end result, this recruiting class in 2025 was save 2024. That's the best class that Leipold's staff has brought in. But among the 4 classes that he has brought in, 22, 23, 24, 25, you could argue it's the second best. It was pretty close together with the class of 2023. Well, now you land this kid, it is better. So even if it's not as good as last year because you had a Dak Brinkley and Deshaun Warner, even if you've missed on maybe a few more guys this year than you have in the past, that's just part of the nature of the business in recruiting. And the end result is what players you do sign, what players you do end up bringing in, and how you develop those players and turn them into players. And that sounded super redundant, so apologies for that. But I feel good about this recruiting class for KU, and that only adds to it with McCorkle. You were looking for another DB. You're obviously going to be losing Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson after the season. You have a wave of young corners and DBs that are waiting in the wings. Guys like Jalen Todd and Jameel Croft and Austin Alexander that I still think they're going to be okay moving forward, but you got to keep those cupboards stocked, and they did just that with Chris McCorkle. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. We'll be back on Tuesday's episode to talk for Kansas to win the Big 12. What are some areas that they have to figure out and do better than a season ago? This has been Locked On Jayhawks. See you next time with LOJ.